It began with a sound, not a loud one, but a low, dragging scrape. Jack Halvorson, a 63-year-old retired forest ranger, sat reading by the wood-burning stove in his log cabin, nestled at the base of Stillwater Ridge. The hour was late. Snow had started falling hours earlier, soft at first, now heavy. The wind rattled the windows with urgency. He was used to the sounds of the forest. Whined through the trees, branches groaning under snow, the far-off howl of a coyote, all familiar. But this sound was different. It was closer, intentional, and slow. Jack put his mug down and grabbed the flashlight hanging by the door. The beam cut through the dark as he made his way out onto the porch. The sound was clearer now, the dragging of something heavy. He turned toward the garage. There was movement. And then two glowing eyes met his beam. A bear. A massive grizzly, her fur dark and matted with blood. She was limping, her left front paw barely touching the snow. She stopped a few feet from the garage door and let out a low, painful groan. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Jack's instinct screamed at him to back away, close the door, call someone. But his heart, the part that had spent decades rescuing animals and patrolling the wilderness, told him something else. He whispered, "You shouldn't be here, girl. What happened to you?" She dropped to her belly, trembling. Jack looked around. Snow fell harder, blanketing the trees in silence. No one was coming out here tonight. If he shut that door, she'd freeze or bleed out before morning. His hand trembled slightly as he stepped forward, unlatched the garage door, and pulled it open. She didn't move. Slowly, almost respectfully, she dragged herself inside, collapsed onto the concrete floor, and let out a long, exhausted breath. He stood in the doorway, stunned. A wild grizzly, in his garage. Alive, but barely. He took a deep breath. Then grabbed blankets, an old mattress, and a bucket of water. "If I'm crazy," he muttered, "then so be it." When the storm quieted, Jack stirred awake to silence. He pulled on his coat and boots, heart pounding with the anxiety of second-guessing last night's decision. He stepped into the garage. The bear was still there, but this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her, curled tightly against her belly, was a tiny cub. Its fur was slightly wet from melted snow, and it was barely larger than a house cat. It blinked at Jack with wide, frightened eyes before hiding beneath its mother's thick arm. Jack froze. "You brought a cub?" He knelt slowly. "That's why you came." She hadn't just been looking for shelter. She had risked everything for her baby. Whatever injured her hadn't stopped her. She had come down the mountain, wounded, with a single mission: find safety for her child. Jack's voice cracked. "You clever, brave girl." Over the next few days, Jack transformed his garage into a temporary sanctuary. He cleared out his old tools and stacked hay from a neighbor's barn. He warmed up bowls of mashed apples and soaked oats with water. The mother bear ate slowly, grateful but cautious. The cub, though shy at first, soon began to play, pawing at Jack's boots, biting at dangling cords. Jack named them. The mother, Mara. The cub, Sprig. He was careful never to treat them like pets. He didn't speak in baby voices or try to touch them. But he did talk to them, as he worked, as he cooked, as he walked past. "I had a son," he said one evening, watching the cub wrestle with a blanket. Name was Danny. Left for the city years ago. Always had a soft spot for animals. He paused. Lost his mother too young. "Maybe that's why I couldn't leave you two out there." By the 5th day, the storm passed, but the snow hadn't melted. Jack hiked down the main trail to check the old landline pole, still dead. On his way back, he noticed something strange. Tracks. Human tracks. 2 sets. Recent. When he got back to the cabin, he found a bloodied steel bear trap left near the tree line. He went cold. He heard voices before he saw the figures. 2 men in camo, rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. "You the guy who called about the bear?" the taller one asked. "No," Jack replied, tense. "I didn't call anyone. We were tracking a wounded grizzly. Real big one. Seen prints around here." Jack's grip on his walking stick tightened. "There's nothing for you here. That bear's not a threat." The second man, younger, hesitated. "She got a cub with her?" Jack's eyes darkened. "You set that trap?" "It's legal," the taller one sneered. "We're within our rights." Jack stepped forward. "If I see you on my land again, I'll be the one calling the law. Not about poaching, about trespassing." The men exchanged looks, then backed off. But Jack knew this wasn't over. That night, Jack barely slept. He packed supplies, food, blankets, first aid kits. He checked the gas in his truck. Mara's wound was healing slowly. Sprig had grown stronger and more playful. But they weren't safe anymore. At dawn, he opened the garage door. "Time to go," he said softly. With effort, Mara stood. She limped, but followed Jack's guidance. He built a crude platform in the bed of his pickup, laying out straw and padding. Sprig climbed in eagerly. Mara hesitated, then joined. Jack looked back at the garage. "This was never supposed to happen," he whispered. "But I'm glad it did." They drove deep into the forest, far beyond public trails. There was an old ranger outpost Jack had worked at 20 years ago, unused, hidden, safe. Snow made the path brutal. The truck skidded, struggled, but pushed on. When they arrived, the station was intact, if frozen. He unloaded the bears into the barn, set up a heater powered by solar batteries, and made them comfortable. For the first time in a week, he breathed. Back at the cabin, the hunters returned. They found nothing. Tracks vanished. The garage was cleaned. But they searched, angrily, obsessively. Neighbors grew uneasy. Rumors spread. But one man, the town's sheriff, suspected Jack. He visited quietly. "I heard some noise about you and a bear," he said. Jack didn't lie. He looked the sheriff in the eyes. "She was hurt. She had a cub. I gave them shelter." The sheriff sighed. "You know I'm not here to punish kindness. But if those hunters find her first, they'll shoot her. And if you're caught transporting wildlife across state lines." "I'll take the heat," Jack said. "But not until they're safe." The sheriff paused. "Where are they now?" Jack said nothing. The sheriff nodded once. "You never told me anything." And left. 3 weeks passed. Mara's wounds healed. Sprig grew bold and curious. Jack spent every day with them, repairing the ranger cabin, walking the forest, collecting wild berries. Then one morning, the helicopters came. Wildlife rescue. The sheriff had made a call, a quiet, careful one. Trusted people. Jack stood by the barn as the rescue team prepared the tranquilizers and stretchers. He knelt beside Mara. "You'll be safe now," he whispered. "No more traps. No more hunters." Mara looked at him, unblinking. Then she lowered her massive head and touched her snout gently to his boot. Sprig did the same. When they were lifted onto the trucks, Jack stood for a long time, watching until they disappeared into the woods. A month later, Jack received a letter. It was from a bear sanctuary in Montana. "The mother and cub are adjusting well. The cub is thriving. The mother is healthy. She remains calm around humans, especially older men. She has a habit of watching the gate around sundown, as if waiting." Jack read it twice. Then smiled. He took the letter, placed it in a wooden frame, and hung it above his fireplace. Years passed. Jack's hair thinned. His knees stiffened. But one spring he made the journey, across 2 states, to the sanctuary. He walked slowly up the dirt path. The sun was warm. The air smelled of pine and fresh earth. Then he saw her. Mara. Older now, but unmistakable. Strong. Majestic. She saw him too. The sanctuary staff froze as Mara rose and ambled toward the fence. No growl. No pacing. Only a low, familiar sound, a kind of rumbling hum. Then a second bear appeared, larger now, but with the same bright eyes. Sprig. They both came to the fence. Jack pressed his hand to the mesh. And for a moment, all 3 were still. Back home, Jack kept a journal. In it, he wrote stories of the forest, the storm, the garage, the cub. He never published them, but the locals started calling him the Bear Whisperer. No one ever saw those hunters again. And on snowy nights, when the wind howled through the pines, Jack sometimes imagined a soft scratch at the garage door. He never opened it again. But he always smiled. Because once, in the dead of winter, he opened the door to a dying bear. And woke to a story that would never die.